The takeover, the Caitlin Clark takeover continues as Caitlin Clark has incredible news ahead of the start of this WNBA season. And we also have to get into Sophie Cunningham not being protected by the Indiana Fever in this.
The Caitlin Clark takeover just hit a new level. March 29th, NBC's Basketball Night in America. Caitlin Clark won't be watching from home. She'll be on the desk providing analysis alongside Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, and Tracy McGrady for the Knicks vs. Thunder matchup. A WNBA player analyzing NBA games on national television before her second season even starts. That's not normal. That's a cultural shift happening in real time.
Oklahoma City Thunder. Caitlin Clark takeover continues. I mean, why not? We got Stephanie White going and doing NCAA announcements and all types of stuff. She's not even focused on who we protecting in this expansion draft, okay? Caitlin Clark going to do her thing. Basketball Night in America. The takeover. Can't stop, won't stop. Caitlin Clark records, baby. We get down, baby. Y'all put down in the comments if you know what song that.
But here's what makes this moment complicated. While Caitlin's building her media empire, the Indiana Fever are making decisions that have their fan base spiraling. Sophie Cunningham, the blonde bomber who became a fan favorite by being Caitlin's enforcer, won't be protected in the expansion draft. The same player who stepped up during that Connecticut Sun situation, who brought energy and toughness to a team that desperately needed it, is about to be left exposed for Toronto and Portland to select. And before you panic, there's actual strategy here that most people are missing.
This does not mean the Indiana Fever don't value Sophie Cunningham. This does not mean she won't be back. Okay, let's get into it. Why the Fever are unlikely to protect Sophie Cunningham in the WNBA expansion draft. Here it says the Indiana Fever face an unforgiving situation regarding Sophie Cunningham's future. All right. And shout out to Grant Young, Robin Lundberg, who's also a part of this or whatever, Sports Illustrated. This is courtesy of them. It says it won't be hard for the Indiana.
The expansion draft rules create a mathematical reality that changes everything. Each team protects 5 players. For Indiana, 4 spots are automatic: Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Lexi Hall. That 5th spot is where it gets interesting. The choice comes down to Sophie Cunningham or Mikayla Timpson. And the decision isn't about who the Fever value more. It's about who they can actually keep. Here's the wrinkle nobody's talking about. Toronto and Portland can only select 1 unrestricted free agent total, not 1 each, 1 combined between both teams. With over 100 veterans hitting free agency, the odds of either expansion team using their single unrestricted free agent pick on Sophie Cunningham are slim.
Of Sophie Cunningham for stepping in during that Connecticut Sun ambush attack that was taking place on Caitlin Clark. Make no mistake about that. Here it says it earned her notoriety from the women's basketball community and admiration from Fever fans, Caitlin Clark fans. However, the harsh reality is that the WNBA is a business, and as much as everybody wants Cunningham back in Indianapolis, the Fever are between a rock and a hard place right now. Okay? Here, why the Fever protecting Sophie Cunningham doesn't make sense. The rules for the upcoming WNBA expansion draft for the Toronto Temple and Portland Fire were revealed.
Think about what selecting Sophie would mean for an expansion team. If Toronto or Portland picks her, they're required to offer her a veteran supermax contract. That's the rule. And Sophie would have to take it, because she's never getting that money anywhere else. Not from Indiana, not from any team in free agency. She's a quality role player, but she's not a max contract centerpiece for a franchise. So the Fever are making a calculated bet. Protect Mikayla Timpson, who's still under contract and would definitely get selected if left unprotected. Let Sophie hit the open market as an unrestricted free agent, then bring her back at a reasonable number that actually matches her value to the team.
Only select 1 upcoming unrestricted free agent. Since there are over 100 veterans who will become free agents, this limits their options, okay? Also note is that the Fever can only give 1 core designation to a veteran this offseason and will almost certainly use that on Kelsey Mitchell. Therefore, if one of the 2 expansion teams were to use their pick on Cunningham and thus give her the veteran supermax contract, as per the rules, she'll surely take that because she won't be able to get that much money from the Fever or any other team.
The contrast between these 2 situations tells you everything about where the WNBA is right now. Caitlin Clark is getting opportunities that didn't exist for women's basketball players 2 years ago. Network television analyst gigs, media appearances that treat her as a basketball expert, not just a women's basketball expert. She's crossing over in ways that are opening doors for everyone behind her. Meanwhile, the business side of the league is still operating with constraints that force difficult choices. The Fever can only give one core designation this offseason. They've already used it on Kelsey Mitchell. Sophie Cunningham doesn't have restricted free agent status like Lexi Hall, which means Indiana can't match offers from other teams. They can only make their best pitch and hope she chooses to return.
There's no point in you losing a Michaela Timpson if something like that could happen. And the point is, I don't think neither one of these teams are going to pick Sophie Cunningham and give her a max contract to be there. So I think the Indiana Fever will be fine there, and she'll just be hitting the market as an unrestricted free agent, and the Indiana Fever would have the same opportunity to retain her. Okay. Here it says, since Cunningham most likely won't be cored by the Fever, she could also leave Indiana in free agency.
Let's talk about what Sophie actually means to this team. She played 23 games in her first season with Indiana, missing a significant chunk due to injury. When she was on the court, she averaged 6.2 points and shot 34% from three. Those aren't numbers that scream max contract player. But her value went beyond the stat sheet. That Connecticut Sun playoff series when Kennedy Burke went after Caitlin and Sophie immediately stepped in. That moment defined her role. She became the enforcer, the veteran presence willing to take the heat so the franchise player didn't have to. Fever fans fell in love with that toughness, that willingness to be the bad guy when the team needed one.
The team and would surely be selected if unprotected. If Michaela Timpson's unprotected, she's going to get picked. Okay, one optimistic potential outcome is that neither expansion team selects her. They can select one unrestricted free agent after all, and Cunningham then decides to return to the Indiana Fever in free agency. But the hope likely won't ease anxiety for Indiana Fever fans come expansion draft. So, you know, there is a chance that the Indiana Fever could lose Sophie Cunningham on the open market, because if somebody jumps out the window and say, hey, we got 9.
Here's where the Fever's gamble gets risky. If Sophie hits the open market and another team offers her $950,000, Indiana probably can't match that. Their realistic ceiling is somewhere around $600,000 to $650,000. That's a $300,000 gap. And nobody should be expected to leave that kind of money on the table out of loyalty, especially for a player who's 29 years old and doesn't have many prime earning years left. But look at the market. Which teams have that kind of cap space and a desperate need for a 34% three-point shooter who brings energy off the bench? The expansion teams will be building from scratch, looking for younger players with upside. Contenders are capped out. The Fever's main competition for Sophie's services might be teams in similar positions, mid-tier squads looking for veteran depth.
I think the Indiana Fever have an awesome shot at retaining Sophie Cunningham once she hits the open market. I don't believe either one of these teams will select her in the expansion draft and want to give her a max contract. She's just not a max player. We love her. Great role player, great hustle, great energy, can shoot the three, but she's not a max player. So I don't see the Portland Fire or Toronto Tempo completely jumping out the window to give her that kind of contract. So I believe the Indiana Fever will have a great opportunity to retain her on the open market. Get down in the comments and let me know what you guys think. This is Keep the Vision.
Now connect this back to Caitlin's NBC appearance. Stephanie White, the Fever's head coach, has been doing college basketball commentary all offseason. She's not locked in the film room studying expansion draft protection strategies. She's building her own brand, taking opportunities that come from coaching the league's biggest star. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it creates an interesting dynamic. The franchise built around Caitlin Clark is making business decisions that might cost them a fan-favorite role player. Meanwhile, Caitlin herself is transcending the league, getting opportunities in NBA media that have nothing to do with the Fever's success or failure. She's becoming bigger than the team, bigger than the league in some ways.
Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share the channel.
This is the reality of building around a generational talent. Everything accelerates. The media attention, the business opportunities, the pressure to win immediately. The Fever went from lottery team to playoff contender in one season because of Caitlin. Now they're making win-now decisions, prioritizing players who fit the championship timeline over sentimental favorites. Michaela Timpson is 22 years old. She's under contract. She showed flashes of being a legitimate rotation piece during her rookie season. Protecting her makes sense if you're thinking about the next 5 years, not just next season. Sophie is a known quantity, a solid veteran who helps you win games right now. But if you're building a championship core around Caitlyn and Aaliyah, you need young players who can grow with them. Here's what nobody's saying out loud. The Fever might actually want Sophie to test the market. If she gets a big offer from another team, great, she gets paid what she deserves. If she doesn't, Indiana brings her back at a number that works for both sides. It's cold business logic, but it's how championship teams operate. You don't overpay for role players, even beloved ones, when you're trying to build a contender. The risk is that Sophie takes it personally, that she sees being left unprotected as disrespect, even if the front office explains the strategy. Relationships matter in this league. Players talk. If Sophie leaves and tells other free agents that Indiana didn't value her, that affects future recruitment. The Fever are betting that their winning culture and Caitlyn's presence will outweigh any hard feelings. Meanwhile, Caitlyn's doing NBA analysis on March 29th. The Knicks and Thunder, two of the league's most exciting teams. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, one of the best players in basketball, going head-to-head with New York's playoff push. And Caitlyn will be breaking down the action alongside 3 Hall of Famers who've combined for over 40,000 career points. That's not a token appearance. That's NBC saying we trust this 23-year-old to provide legitimate basketball analysis on our premier NBA broadcast. They're not putting her on a women's basketball special or a feel-good feature. They're putting her on Basketball Night in America, analyzing the men's game at the highest level. Think about the preparation that requires. Caitlyn's going to study film on the Knicks and Thunder. She's going to have talking points ready about Shai's scoring efficiency, New York's defensive schemes, Oklahoma City's transition offense. She'll be expected to hold her own in conversations with Carmelo, Vince, and Tracy, 3 guys who've seen everything in basketball. There's no room for surface-level analysis. She has to bring real insight, and she will, because that's who she is. The same preparation and basketball IQ that made her the most dominant college player we've ever seen translates to media work. She sees the game differently. She can explain complex concepts in ways casual fans understand. That's a rare skill, and networks are going to keep giving her opportunities because of it. Here's what this means for the WNBA's future. Caitlyn Clark doing NBA analysis normalizes women as basketball experts, period. Not women's basketball experts. Basketball experts. The next generation of young girls watching will see her on that desk and understand that their basketball knowledge has value beyond just the women's game. That's cultural change happening in real time. But it also creates tension, because while Caitlyn's elevating the profile of women in basketball media, her own team is making tough business decisions that might alienate parts of their fan base. Fever fans who love Sophie Cunningham are going to be upset when she's not protected. Some will understand the strategy. Others will see it as the front office choosing a younger player over the veteran who stood up for their franchise star. Let's game out the expansion draft scenarios. Best case for Indiana, neither Toronto nor Portland select Sophie. She hits free agency, tests the market, doesn't get an offer she can't refuse, and returns to the Fever at $650,000 per year. Everyone's happy. The Trez-led chase stays together. The blonde bomber keeps bombing threes and playing enforcer. Worst case, an expansion team takes a flyer on Sophie, offers her the required supermax, and she's gone. Indiana loses a fan favorite for nothing. Or worse, she hits free agency, another contender offers her $800,000, and the Fever can't match. Sophie leaves feeling undervalued, and the fan base revolts. Most likely case, Sophie goes unselected, hits free agency, gets offers in the $700,000 range, and Indiana has to decide if they'll stretch their budget to keep her. That's where it gets interesting, because at that point, it's not about the expansion draft rules. It's about how much the Fever actually value her presence in the locker room and on the court. Remember, this team went from 20-game losers to playoff contender in one season. Chemistry matters, continuity matters. Bringing back the core group that figured out how to win together has value beyond individual statistics. Sophie was part of that process. She bought into her role. She accepted being a 6th or 7th option offensively because she understood what the team needed from her. How many veterans are willing to do that? How many players with Sophie's experience would come off the bench behind younger players and not complain? That's worth something. Maybe not max contract money, but definitely worth the effort to retain her if the price is reasonable. Here's the broader context. The WNBA is expanding for the first time since 2008. Toronto and Portland are paying $50 million each for the privilege of building franchises from scratch. They're going to be aggressive in the expansion draft, looking for players who can be cornerstones, but they're also going to be smart. Wasting their one unrestricted free agent pick on a 29-year-old role player doesn't make sense when they could grab a younger player with upside or use that pick on a legitimate star. The expansion draft rules are designed to prevent teams from getting gutted. Protecting 5 players means your core stays intact. Indiana keeps Caitlin, Aaliyah, Kelsey, Lexi, and Michaela. That's their foundation. Everyone else is either expendable or replaceable. That sounds harsh, but it's reality. You build around stars, and you fill in the gaps with players who fit your system. Sophie Cunningham fits Indiana's system. She spaces the floor, she plays physical defense, she brings energy. She's willing to be the villain when necessary, but she's not irreplaceable. The Fever could find another 3-and-D wing in free agency or the draft. They could develop a younger player to fill that role. The basketball side of the equation says letting Sophie walk isn't catastrophic. The emotional side is different. Fans don't think about roster construction and salary cap management. They think about moments. They remember Sophie stepping up in the playoffs. They remember her chemistry with Caitlin. They remember feeling like someone on the team had their stars back. Those memories create loyalty. And when the front office makes decisions that contradict that loyalty, it creates backlash. This is the challenge of running a WNBA franchise in 2025. You're trying to build a championship contender with a salary cap that's a fraction of what NBA teams work with. You're making difficult choices about which players to invest in, knowing that every dollar counts, and you're doing it under a microscope. Because Caitlin Clark's presence means every decision gets scrutinized by millions of fans who might be new to how professional basketball roster construction actually works. The Fever's front office has to balance all of that. They have to make smart basketball decisions while managing fan expectations. They have to build for the future while trying to win now. They have to develop young players while keeping veterans happy, and they have to do it all knowing that one wrong move could cost them the goodwill they've built with the league's most passionate fan base. Back to Caitlin on March 29th. That NBC appearance is another step in her evolution from college phenom to cultural icon. She's not just a basketball player anymore. She's a media personality, a brand, a voice that networks want because she brings credibility and draws eyeballs. The WNBA benefits from that. Every time Caitlin appears on a major platform, she's promoting the league indirectly. She's showing casual sports fans that women's basketball players have elite basketball minds. But it also highlights the gap between where Caitlin is individually and where the league is collectively. She's doing NBA analysis while her team is worried about losing a role player in the expansion draft. She's transcending the WNBA while the WNBA is still figuring out basic business operations like how to structure an expansion draft that doesn't destroy competitive balance. So here's what this all comes down to. The Caitlin Clark takeover is real. It's happening across multiple platforms. It's changing what's possible for women in basketball media, and it's creating opportunities that didn't exist before she came along. That's the positive side of this story. The complicated side is that her success creates pressure on everyone around her. The Fever have to make perfect decisions